Imagine a life that is just absolutely undeniably picture perfect. And I'm not talking about that, that curated, filtered perfection we see on social media today.
Right, the fake stuff.
Exactly. I mean, that visceral feeling in your bones, kind of perfect. Knew the kind I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a bustling, spotlit film set of a life. You've got the mascara, the butterflies in your stomach, that first real earth-shattering love. You're 15 years old. You are the youngest of three, the favorite, the golden girl.
The world is basically just opening up its arms to you.
It really is. And then one ordinary sunny morning, you just walk at the front door with a rucksack on your back and silence. 10 years of absolute silence.
It's the nightmare scenario, truly. It is that primal fear that lives in the back of every parent's mind,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, in the mind of anyone who has ever loved someone.
Yeah.
It's the suddenness of the cut. One moment, everything is there, the future, the potential, all the noise of a happy house, and the next, the timeline just stops.
Exactly. And that is exactly where we are starting today. We are taking a deep dive into Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell.
Such a compelling book.
It really is. Now, if you think you know thrillers, buckle up, because this one isn't just a mystery, it's a total psychological pressure cooker.
Oh, without a doubt. And what's really fascinating about this particular story is that it doesn't just focus on the classic whodunit.
Right.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
that is central, and we're going to get to the twist, and trust me, there are massive twists here. But the real weight of this narrative is on the what happens after.
The fallout.
Exactly, the fallout. It's about the corrosion of not knowing. It explores what happens to the people left standing when the music just suddenly stops.
The stakes here are incredibly high. Our mission today is to really unpack this. We're following Laurel Mack. She's a mother whose life effectively ended the day her 15-year-old daughter, Ellie, disappeared.
And for 10 years, she has just been stuck.
Stuck in this amber, this frozen state of waiting. She's the woman who can't move forward, because moving forward means accepting something unacceptable.
But here is the hook that really grabs you. It's not just about finding out what happened to Ellie.
No, the narrative shifts gears in a very unsettling way, because 10 years later, Laurel meets a man. A charming, slightly odd stranger.
And then she meets his daughter.
Yes. A 9-year-old girl who looks exactly like Ellie. And I don't mean a passing resemblance, I mean, it's uncanny. It's like looking at a Xerox copy.
And that's where the psychological thriller element really takes hold.
Yeah.
We aren't just looking at a cold case anymore. We are looking at a present-day impossibility.
It raises all these immediate questions.
Right. Questions about reality, about memory, trauma. Is Laurel projecting? Is she just seeing what she so desperately wants to see? Or is something incredibly dark happening right in front of her face?
So we're going to unravel this. We're going to look at the corrosive nature of ambiguous loss, the terrifying proximity of danger, which, let me tell you, gets really creepy in this story. Oh, it gets so creepy.
And the absolute lengths a mother will go to for the truth.
I think we need to frame this properly for you listening. This is fundamentally a story about ambiguous loss.
Can you explain that term a bit more?
Sure. It's a psychological term for a grief that simply cannot settle. If there is no body, there's no funeral. If there's no answer, there's no ending.
You're just in limbo.
Exactly. Laurel is living in a world where her grief has absolutely no place to land. It's like treading water in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight. Your brain is constantly scanning the horizon, unable to rest.
So let's go back to the before, because to really understand the horror of the after, you have to understand just how shiny and perfect the before was.
It creates such a stark contrast.
The book paints this vivid picture of a family operating at peak happiness. We have Ellie Mack. She's 15.
Yeah.
And the text actually describes those months before she disappeared as the best months.
Just the best.
Every moment presented itself to her like a gift. And a big part of that is she's in love with Theo Goodman. Let's pause on Theo for a second. Because in the mind of a 15-year-old girl, this isn't just a crush. This is epic.
The book describes him as the best-looking boy in year 11.
Bar none. And year 10 and year 9.
Right. But not year 7, apparently.
No, the boys in year 7 were bug-eyed babies.
Yeah.
But Theo.
Theo was the absolute dream. For Ellie, school had transformed entirely. It wasn't a cage anymore.
It was the bustling, spotlit film set for her love story. I just love that description. It captures that teenage main character energy so perfectly.
Waking up in a flurry of mascara and butterflies.
Her pulse quickening as she nears the school gates, just hoping to catch a glimpse of him. It's that absolute innocence of not seeing the warning signs.
That is the ultimate tragedy of hindsight, isn't it? The narrative tells us that if she could somehow rewind the timeline, unroll it like a ball of wool, she'd see the knots.
She'd see the snags.
She'd see the warning signs. But back then, when she knew nothing about anything, she hadn't seen it coming at all. She walked straight into it with her eyes wide open. We have to talk about the era, too, because this is pre-smartphone saturation. If your kid didn't come home, you couldn't just track their iPhone.
You couldn't check their Snap Map or whatever.
Exactly. You had to call the landline of the friend they were supposed to be with. That specific analog panic is so crucial to the feeling of this story.
Oh, the calling around phase. It's almost a relic of a bygone time now. But it adds so much to the isolation. You're tethered to the wall by a literal cord, waiting for a ring.
You are physically bound to the house, just waiting for news.
And then the event happens. And it's so incredibly mundane, which somehow makes it so much worse.
She leaves for the library. She has a rucksack full of books. She says she'll be back for lunch. And she even asks if there's lasagne left.
Yes. Don't let Hannah have it. Or Jake.
Those are her last words.
No.
A promise about leftover lasagne. And then she never comes home.
It's chilling.
I really want to talk about the initial panic. Because usually in these thriller stories, you get the police chase immediately. Sirens, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. But here, the focus is on something so intensely domestic.
Be quiet.
Laurel is standing in the kitchen, and she knows deep down that something is terribly wrong. And do you know why?
It's the cereal bowl.
A cereal bowl. It is such a tiny, seemingly insignificant thing.
It is, but it's actually a deeply specific psychological trigger. In psychology, we rely heavily on what's called predictive processing.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
Well, your brain constantly predicts the state of your environment. You predict the state of your kitchen before you even walk into it based on the rhythm of your household.
Right, you know who leaves what where.
Exactly. When Laurel sees that bowl missing, it's not just a chore left undone, it's a prediction error. And that error triggers an immediate fight-or-flight response.
She isn't just overreacting to a messy kitchen.
Not at all. Her subconscious has already calculated that the fundamental pattern of her life is broken. That missing cereal bowl is the exact moment the universe splits for her.
That is so fascinating and honestly terrifying. She stands there picturing her daughter dead in a ditch just because of a household chore that wasn't done.
It shows how deeply attuned a mother is to the invisible rhythm of her child's life.
She knew, even before she picked up the phone to call the police, that the world had tilted off its axis.
And that rhythm is permanently shattered. The police arrive, and the thing begins. That's what Laurel calls it, the thing that never ended.
And this is where we really start to see the disintegration of the family. We have Laurel, and we have her husband, Paul.
And watching their marriage fall apart is almost as painful as the disappearance itself.
It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You want to reach into the book and scream at them to hold on to each other, but they just can't.
It's a textbook example of how severe trauma and grief can isolate people rather than bring them together. They grieved in completely different ways. And in a marriage, that can be fatal.
Laurel actually describes their family life before as a series of petty worries. Late bills, unfulfilled duties, bad smells.
Normal life stuff.
Right. And then suddenly, all those petty little worries are entirely replaced by pure terror, despair, and horror.
And Paul, he tries to move on, right? Or at least that is how Laurel perceives it.
He does, and Laurel bitterly resents him for it. Paul is described throughout as a good man. He's not a villain. He's not a bad guy.
He's just coping the only way his brain knows how to cope.
He starts buying new suits. He looks for promotions at work. He talks about upgrading the car. He's even showing her brochures for hotels and resorts for holidays.
He's desperately trying to keep the train on the tracks.
Well, Laurel looks at him and thinks, you aren't insane enough.
That is such a powerful, devastating line. He wasn't insane enough. Laurel needed him to be entirely broken. She needed his external grief to match the violent, gaping hole ripped inside their lives.
When he tries to normalize things, she sees it as a profound betrayal.
She feels like he's too lazy, or maybe too weak, to hold on to the pain the way she is holding on to it.
It's almost like she feels he is actively erasing Ellie by simply trying to live a normal Tuesday.
Exactly. For Laurel, remaining in the pain is her way of remaining with Ellie. If she heals, she leaves Ellie behind in the past.
Paul is willing to heal. Laurel isn't.
And that fundamental, unbridgeable difference destroys them completely.
And the final nail in the coffin. It's when the police downgrade the search. Days turn into weeks, and they start saying, well, maybe she ran away.
There's no CCTV, there's no physical evidence of an abduction, no ransom note, so they naturally drift toward the runaway theory.
And Paul, what does Paul say to that?
He says it's a sort of closure, I guess.
Oof, that hurts just hearing it out loud. Sort of closure.
Yeah, it's brutal. To Laurel, that's completely unforgivable. Calling it a runaway case might be a convenient closure for the police or a psychological survival tactic for Paul to rationalize it.
To think she's out there, she's making choices, she's alive.
Right, but for Laurel, it's a cowardly lie. It is the final nail in the dry box of bones of their marriage.
Dry box of bones. That is such a visceral, haunting image. It implies that everything juicy, everything vibrant and alive has just completely evaporated.
And the siblings, Hannah and Jake, they just sort of drift away, don't they?
They really do. They become like ghost trains on a track, just automatically keeping to the schedule. Hannah takes her A-levels, Jake goes off to university in the West Country to be a chartered surveyor.
But the warm, emotional core of the family is totally gone.
Laurel describes the family as having literally nothing left to give each other. They became that dry box of bones before they even officially separated.
So Laurel enters this massive stasis. Paul leaves a year later, the kids leave. And Laurel stays in that big empty house. For years.
She stays there just in case Ellie uses her key to come through the front door.
It's incredibly heartbreaking. She's literally sniffing the air for her daughter. Every single time she comes home, she's checking the hallway for the smell of Ellie.
The impulse body spray, the cheap shampoo, the teenage sweat.
She eventually moves to a flat, but even then she's not really living. She straps herself into what she calls a straitjacket of routine.
She works, she comes home, she exists.
She completely stops trying to be pretty. She stops worrying about her appearance altogether. She said she stopped that back in 1985. She is basically just serving time.
And that's usually where a movie would just cut to text on the screen saying 10 years later.
Right, a quick fade to black.
But we really need to pause in that gap. Because for Laurel, it wasn't a quick cut. It was 3,650 agonizing days of waking up and checking the phone.
It was the incredibly slow erosion of her identity.
Before we get to the bones, we have to deeply understand that silence. It's the deafening silence of a house where no one is ever coming home.
That's a really great point. It's not just a convenient time jump for the plot. It's a decade of erosion. It's 10 years of calcification. She is hardened completely around this loss.
Which makes the catalyst so shocking. This brings us to section 2 of our deep dive. 10 years later. This is where the engine of the narrative really revs up, because the police come back.
And this time, they aren't bringing a theory. They are bringing physical evidence. They find remains in a drainage ditch in the woods.
And not just a piece of torn clothing or the faded backpack. We are talking femurs, tibias, and a skull.
It is brutal. The forensics heavily suggest she was hit by a vehicle, her broken body was dragged into the woodland, buried in a very shallow grave, and then left for animals to scatter over the years.
This destroys the runaway theory in an instant.
It obliterates it. And you'd think, logically speaking, this would finally bring closure. We hear that word all the time. Everyone tells Laurel she needs closure.
But for Laurel, finding these bones brings literally nothing.
The hope is entirely gone. The desperate fantasy that Ellie is out there living a bohemian life in France or backpacking in Thailand, it's just gone.
And it's replaced by a literal box of bones. It leaves her with an absolute void. I think that's something people who haven't experienced missing persons cases really don't understand.
How do you mean?
Well, hope is torture. It keeps you awake, it drives you mad, but it is also fuel. It keeps your heart beating. When you take that hope away, what is actually left?
Nothing. Just the cold, biological reality of death. It's hard, and it offers absolutely zero comfort.
But, strangely enough, this void seems to open the door for something else. A month after burying those bones, Laurel goes to a cafe, and she meets a man, Floyd.
Floyd is a very fascinating character. He's charming, he's charismatic, but he deliberately presents himself to her as damaged.
He tells Laurel his wife left him.
They bond instantly over this shared sense of being broken toys.
There's this weird magnetic attraction, right? It's not just a physical thing. It's almost like their respective traumas recognize each other across the table.
Laurel actually says she feels like their meeting wasn't random, like they recognized the strange holes in each other.
Laurel feels truly seen for the first time. For a decade, she hasn't been a person. She's just been the mother of the missing girl.
The tragic figure of the neighborhood.
Right. But with Floyd, she's just a woman having a glass of wine with an interesting man. She's feeling attractive again. But there are these really odd details about him.
Like the birthday.
Yes, the birthday. Floyd casually mentions he doesn't actually know his own birthday.
which is incredibly strange. Who doesn't know their own birthday?
Laurel says he's the first person she has ever met in her entire life who doesn't know.
It seems like a quirky detail at first. Maybe he's just a bit bohemian or mysterious. But in a psychological thriller like this, nothing is accidental.
It's a red flag.
A huge one. It signals that Floyd is dangerously untethered. He doesn't have a grounded, verifiable history. He's a man floating in the wind, which makes him unpredictable.
And this leads us to the moment that changes absolutely everything. Section 3, the resemblance. Floyd invites Laurel over to meet his daughter. Her name is Poppy. She's 9 years old.
And when Laurel walks in and sees this child, it is visceral. The book describes a loud clatter of recognition.
Poppy is the spitting image of Ellie. And not just a little bit around the eyes, it's like looking at a living ghost. Laurel is practically breathless.
And this is where we have to deeply examine the psychology of Laurel. She continues dating Floyd. But you have to ask yourself, and the story really forces you to ask, is she falling for Floyd the man?
Or is she falling for the chance to be near a ghost of Ellie?
Exactly. It's incredibly creepy when you really sit down and think about it. She's spending time with this man, sleeping in his bed, but her eyes are constantly obsessively drawn to his 9-year-old daughter because she looks like her dead child.
It is the ultimate flesh and blood manifestation of that ambiguous loss we talked about earlier. Here is a physical, breathing representation of what she lost.
Poppy has the exact same mannerisms, the same look, the same laugh.
Laurel seriously starts to wonder if she's hallucinating. She questions her own sanity. She thinks, am I projecting this? Or is there somehow a biological connection here?
She even starts to wonder if Floyd is somehow involved in Ellie's disappearance, or if this is just a cruel, random cosmic joke.
She mentions these strange coincidences. Poppy's behavior echoes Ellie so strongly that Laurel simply can't let it go. She starts digging.
And the detective work begins.
And thank goodness she does start digging, because literally everyone else in her life thinks she's losing her mind.
Her ex-husband, Paul, her surviving kids, Hannah and Jake, they all think she's just pathologically projecting her unresolved grief onto this random, innocent child.
But Laurel trusts her gut. Which brings us to section 4, the clues. Laurel starts connecting the dots, and she forces herself to go back to the past. She remembers the tutor.
Noelle Donnelly.
Right, Noelle. She was Ellie's math tutor right before she vanished. Laurel calls her daughter Hannah to ask about her. She says, do you remember the Irish woman? Tall, red hair.
And here is where the geography of the neighborhood becomes incredibly important. Laurel realizes that Ellie disappeared on Stroud Green Road.
And that is exactly where Noelle lived.
It's not just a coincidence of geography either. There is a terrifying pattern. Noelle herself disappeared a few years later. She vanished completely, taking her own child with her.
So Laurel calls Noelle's mother, Breda, over in Ireland. And she learns that Noelle was supposed to come home to Ireland with her daughter. But instead, she supposedly gave the child to the father and vanished into thin air.
So Laurel is fiercely pulling on this thread. But then she remembers something else. I want to circle back to the burglary.
Yes, the burglary.
Because when you read this early in the book, it just feels like a weird, depressing detail about a grieving family's bad luck. But when you look back at it with context, it is the most terrifying scene in the whole story.
It really is. It's the classic invasion of the home trope, but completely inverted. Let's look at the inventory of that break-in again. A thief breaks into the Mack house. They leave the expensive jewelry. They leave the high-end stereo system.
They take a lemon drizzle cake.
A cake. Hannah had baked it. It was sitting right there on the counter, waiting to be iced.
Just imagine the psychology of that for a second. You are a thief, you've broken into a house, you are experiencing a massive adrenaline dump, and you stop in the kitchen to steal an uniced cake.
That should have been the massive flare gun going off for the police detectives.
It wasn't, because police generally look for standard criminal logic. Junkies steal weird stuff to pawn, that's the usual rationale. But you're exactly right. The theft of a homemade cake screams hunger and a desperate longing for home, not profit.
And they took an old, worthless laptop. That wasn't to sell. That was clearly an attempt to communicate with the outside world.
That's the part that really keeps you up at night. Ellie was in the house.
She was there.
She walked past her family's photos on the wall. She probably smelled her mom's perfume lingering in the hallway. She was a literal ghost haunting her own life, but she was still very much alive.
It changes absolutely everything about the timeline. It means Ellie wasn't killed immediately on that sunny morning. She wasn't Dawn.
She came home?
She walked into the house, took things she desperately needed, maybe to try and contact someone with a phone or laptop, maybe just food because she was starving, and then she left. Or she was forced to leave before anyone got back.
Imagine being Laurel and realizing that years later, that you missed saving your daughter by minutes or maybe just hours.
That she was standing right there eating a slice of cake baked by her sister while you were out at the shops.
Laurel actually says she could sense her when she came home that day. She told the police she felt Ellie's presence in the rooms, but they completely dismissed it as a mother's hysteria.
It's the sheer horror of proximity. She was right there.
And the candlesticks provide the undeniable physical proof of this. Later in the story, Laurel is at Floyd's house, Poppy's house. And what does she spot sitting casually on the shelf?
The silver candlesticks. The ones taken in the burglary.
The very same ones. Laurel picks one up. It's heavy. She knows the feel of it in her hand.
Poppy innocently says they were her mother's. But Laurel knows. She knows the weight of them. She knows the intricate history. Those are her candlesticks.
And that is the exact moment that two separate worlds, the tragic disappearance of Ellie and the impossible existence of Poppy, violently crash together irrevocably.
It's undeniable proof. The man she's currently sleeping with has her stolen property displayed in his living room.
And that specific property links him directly to our missing daughter.
So now we have to pivot hard. We have to look at the awful truth, because the book bravely gives us the perspective of the villain. We actually get inside Noelle Donnelly's head.
And let me tell you, it is a profoundly dark place to be. Noelle isn't just a quirky math tutor. She is the abductor.
What was her motive? Why Ellie? Of all the girls?
Noelle was deeply obsessed. She was fiercely lonely, highly unstable. The text constantly mentions she was fixated on Ellie, constantly referring to her as the golden girl.
She wanted what Ellie had.
She desperately wanted a child of her own. But it wasn't just about having a baby. It was about possessing that specific golden perfection. She viewed Ellie not as a human being with rights, but as a vessel for the life she felt she was owed.
So she takes Ellie, she lures her in, but she doesn't kill her.
No, she keeps her, locked away in a basement.
This is literally the stuff of nightmares. Ellie wasn't a runaway. She wasn't hit by a reckless driver. She was trapped in a dark basement just a few streets away from her mother's kitchen.
For years. And this is where the timeline gets crucial. We talked about the burglary. The burglary was Ellie escaping, or trying to escape.
Well, the book clarifies this in a really twisted way. Noelle admits she kept the bag Ellie had. But the burglary, Noelle implies she almost wanted to be caught eventually, or she was playing a sick, elaborate game with the family.
The heavy implication is that Ellie had a brief moment of freedom, or Noelle allowed a sadistic loosening of the leash that backfired, or perhaps Ellie somehow managed to steal the key Noelle had carelessly dropped. But tragically, ultimately, she ends up right back in that basement.
And eventually, Ellie is passed over. That's the bizarre, clinical phrase Noelle uses.
Passed over. It's such a chilling euphemism for death. Ellie dies in captivity, but before she dies, she gives birth.
This is the massive twist that just completely floors you. Ellie was pregnant.
In a basement.
And who is the father?
Floyd.
Floyd. The man Laurel is currently dating.
The charming man Laurel is sleeping with. The man who is pouring her wine and listening to her trauma. He is the biological father of her missing daughter's child.
So Poppy isn't Noelle's daughter at all?
No. Poppy is Ellie's daughter, which makes Poppy Laurel's biological granddaughter.
That perfectly explains the incredible resemblance. It's not a ghost, it's just genetics.
The biological fact? And Noelle's sick deception runs even deeper than that. Remember the bones, the femurs, and the skull found in the drainage ditch?
Yeah, the hit-and-run forensic theory.
Noelle completely staged it.
What? Wait, really?
She staged the entire thing. Ellie died in the house. She passed over. Noelle callously kept the remains. And then, years later, she literally took the bones to the dump and scattered some in the woods, specifically so Laurel or the police would find them.
Why on earth would you intentionally want the bones of your victim to be found?
To give Laurel closure.
That is deeply, fundamentally twisted.
It's incredibly manipulative. Noelle wanted to leave the country with a clean slate. She wanted to move on with her life. But she felt she couldn't safely leave while the search was still theoretically open in Laurel's mind.
She knew Laurel would never stop looking.
Exactly. She saw Laurel suffering, walking through sinking mud, as she coldly puts it. So she intentionally planted the evidence to close the police case. She gave Laurel a dead daughter so she could safely get away with the live granddaughter.
It's monstrous. It's literally playing God with someone's grief.
It is. It's the ultimate form of control. She controlled Ellie's entire life and body, and then she controlled Laurel's grief and reality.
And this brings us right to section 6, the web of deception. Because we really have to talk about Floyd. We have to address the massive elephant in the room, the astronomical coincidence of it all.
Right.
Laurel meets a man in a random cafe, and he just happens to be the father of her missing daughter's child. In a lesser book, you'd throw it across the room for being unbelievable.
We definitely have to address the coincidence. Feels too neat at first glance. But the book actually does a lot of heavy lifting to explain why this happened. It wasn't random fate. It was calculated predation.
Predation.
Floyd didn't just stumble into that cafe for a latte. He hunted her. And this shifts the entire genre of the book again. It goes from a tragic mystery to a terrifying stalker thriller.
It's the classic Ted Bundy charm offensive. He researched her. He knew she was vulnerable. He knew she was the mother of the famous missing girl. Do you think he was attracted to Laurel, the actual woman, or Laurel, the tragic figure?
I strongly think he was attracted to the narrative. He was a man who clearly felt insignificant, and by inserting himself into this high-profile local tragedy, he suddenly became a main character.
It's a very modern kind of pathology, tragedy vampirism. He wanted to be intimately close to the famous victim.
So he knew exactly who she was.
He knew exactly who she was from day one. He admits it to her later. He says he raked the internet for every piece of information on her. He watched all her tearful press conferences.
He became totally fixated on her tragedy. He admired her sharply cut hair and her tailored clothes on the news.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for just a second. If you meet a woman you purportedly love and she suddenly hands you a baby, do you immediately assume she kidnapped a local teenager to get it? Or do you just accept the gift because you desperately want to be a father? Is Floyd fundamentally evil, or is he just willfully blind?
That's the deeply uncomfortable question at the core of his character, isn't it? But willful blindness is a form of evil when the stakes are human lives.
Very true.
Floyd had a sexual relationship with Noelle. Noelle handed Poppy to him when she disappeared. Floyd knew Noelle was highly unstable. He knew the baby had to come from somewhere, but he actively chose not to look too closely.
He ignored all the massive red flags.
He ignored the blazing neon signs.
Yeah.
He ignored the fact that his girlfriend Noelle had a teenage girl locked in her house. Or at the very least, he deliberately ignored where the baby came from. He eagerly took the child and raised her.
But then, when he meets Laurel, he actively brings Poppy into Laurel's life.
It's almost like he subconsciously wanted to get caught. Or maybe, in some sick way, he wanted to return the child to her bloodline.
Or he was just irresistibly drawn to the source of the trauma. It's a sickness. The book eloquently talks about the betrayal of intimacy. Laurel let this man into her bed. She bared her soul and shared her deepest grief with him.
And all the while, he is the direct physical connection to the woman who stole her daughter.
And the staggering horror of proximity hits Laurel again here. She realizes she walked past Noelle's house for years. She actively admired the beautiful cherry blossoms outside the window,
while her daughter was breathing, living, and intensely suffering just meters away behind that exact wall. That is the haunting thought that keeps Laurel awake. The what if.
If she had just looked a little closer at the window, if she had paused and heard a sound, it's the absolute torture of the almost.
So, we finally reach the resolution, section 7. The ugly truth finally comes out. Laurel directly confronts the reality. She knows about the silver candlesticks. She knows about Noelle's obsession. She knows Poppy is her own blood.
It's a confrontation of devastating emotional proportions. Noelle admits to everything. The abduction, the basement, the staging of the bones, the theft of the cake.
And for Laurel, this revelation is the ultimate double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, she loses Ellie all over again in the worst possible way.
The lingering hope that Ellie ran away and is living a happy life in France or something, that's gone forever. Ellie died in a cold, dark basement. That's a profound horror story.
But on the other hand, she miraculously gains Poppy.
A literal living piece of Ellie survives.
Exactly. The grief is absolute and crushing, but the joy is also intensely real. She finds the granddaughter she never even knew existed. And in Poppy, she clearly sees Ellie. Not just the physical face, but the bright, shining spirit.
What actually happens to Floyd?
Floyd, well, the text heavily implies a very dark end for him.
Yeah.
There's a chilling reference to a past conversation about, what would you do if I died? And later, there is implied guilt or suicide.
He takes the coward's way out.
He essentially exits the picture. He simply can't exist in this harsh new reality where the entire truth is finally known. He knows he is deeply complicit.
And Laurel?
Laurel finally begins to heal, and this is honestly the most important part of the ending. She begins to actively reunite with her remaining family. She reconnects with Hannah and Jake.
The dry box of bones finally gets some life and work back into it.
It really does. There's a beautiful, poignant scene at a wedding, a big family gathering, where Laurel acutely feels the presence of the ghosts.
She feels Ellie. She feels her own mother, Ruby, who passed away.
But she isn't haunted by them in a scary or debilitating way anymore. She's peacefully coexisting with the loss.
She's no longer defined as just the tragic woman whose daughter disappeared.
She's a loving grandmother. She's a mother to her living children. She's a resilient survivor. She finally truly starts to move on with her life.
So, as we wrap this up, what does this all really mean for us?
I think Then She Was Gone is an absolute masterclass in challenging the societal concept of closure. We always loudly say we want the truth. We want to know exactly what happened.
But the truth here was undeniably horrific.
The truth was that Ellie was trapped in a basement and died there alone. That is a terrible nightmare truth.
But is it actually better than the lie?
That is the central question of the novel. The lie, the comforting idea that she ran away, kept Laurel eternally trapped. It kept her tightly bound in that emotional straitjacket for a decade. The truth, as awful and bloody as it was, ultimately set her free. It allowed her to find Poppy and start living again.
So truth allows for survival, even if it completely destroys your hope.
Exactly. And looking closely at the title, Then She Was Gone, it perfectly captures that initial suddenness. 1 minute she's there, vibrant and alive, and then she's just gone.
But the book beautifully argues that she's never really gone.
She is in the bones, she is in the lingering memory, and ultimately she physically lives on in Poppy.
It's a deeply haunting story, but weirdly powerfully hopeful at the very end.
It really is. It's about human resilience. It's about the profound fact that love is ultimately far more stubborn than death.
Okay, here is the provocative question I want to leave you all with today, and it is a genuinely tough one. If you had the choice, knowing a terrible, soul-destroying truth that would finally let you move on, or keeping a comforting false hope that kept you safely trapped in a waiting game forever, which would you actually choose? Laurel had to face the bones to find the girl.
It's a devastating price she had to pay for the truth.
That is it for this deep dive into an ever, then she was gone. It's been a wild emotional ride, folks. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you next time.